Noticing her fear, Wubin wiped the blood off and walked toward her. He untied her hands and pulled her from the chair. Before she could say anything, he wrapped his arms around her tightly, whispering that he had thought he was going to lose her. He asked if she was okay, and if they had done anything to her. Crying, Yuna told him that the man had been about to hurt her and that she was terrified. Wubin wiped her tears and held her close, assuring her that he was there to protect her now and that she had nothing to fear. He helped her outside and into his car, telling her to wait for him. Returning to the small room, he tied the unconscious man to the chair Yuna had been bound to. Standing there for a moment, he glared at the man with pure hatred before turning and walking out. He got into the car and drove away with Yuna. Back at Wubin's place, he sat on the bed, watching as Yuna slept peacefully. He was relieved that he had managed to save her in time. Gently, he reached out and caressed her face, realizing that he might care for her more than he had thought. For her, he would have killed the man without hesitation, but he had refrained from doing so in front of her. Looking at her as she slept, he whispered that he cared about her, and admitted that he didn't fully understand his feelings. He acknowledged that he liked Minsu, but lately Yuna had been occupying his mind and heart. Unsure of what to make of it, he decided he needed time to figure out his emotions. With one last glance at her, he walked out of the room. Meanwhile, Sonjin continued driving around in frustration, searching for clues. The thought of his younger sister being in danger tormented him, and he knew he would never forgive himself if something happened to her. He decided against calling his parents, not wanting to make them panic. He was determined to find her. Just then, his phone rang. Seeing Wubin's name on the screen, he quickly answered, asking if there was any news. Wubin informed him that he had found Yuna and that she was at his place. Without wasting a second, Sonjin made a sharp U-turn and sped toward Wubin's house. When he arrived, he immediately asked where Yuna was. Wubin told him she was upstairs, fast asleep. Sonjin rushed upstairs, entered the room, and stood by her bedside, his emotions overwhelming him. Sitting beside her, he almost broke into tears, apologizing for not protecting her. He whispered that he wouldn't have been able to live with himself if something had happened to her. Looking at her, he vowed to hunt down whoever was responsible and make them pay. Returning to the living room, he asked Wubin where he had found her. Wubin explained that she had been kidnapped and that the man had intended to harm her, but he had arrived just in time. Sonjin grew furious upon hearing this. Wubin voiced his suspicions, questioning why Yuna had been targeted in the first place. He pointed out that the kidnapper didn't seem professional, and that if they had truly wanted ransom, the kidnapping would have been planned more thoroughly instead of rushed. He suggested they investigate further to prevent it from happening again. Sonjin agreed and thanked Wubin for saving Yuna's life. Wubin assured him that Yuna was like family and that he would always be there for her. He then asked about Minsu, and Sonjin replied that he would check on her once he got home. When he arrived, he found Minsu standing alone. She tearfully blamed herself for what had happened, believing that if she had been more careful, none of it would have occurred. Sonjin held her hands, reassuring her that it wasn't her fault. He informed her that Wubin had found Yuna and that she was safe. Minsu, relieved, asked if anything had happened to her. Sonjin reassured her that Wubin had saved her in time. Wiping away her tears, he pulled her into his arms and promised to do a better job protecting both her and Yuna from now on.